And I want to get to Mr. Gary Kaltbaum. Gary's been a good friend of mine for a long time. Gary's the host of Investor's Edge, the radio show, also the author of the book, The Investor's Edge. He's got another book coming out. We met doing market stuff on television. We have a love of sports together. Gary also does a lot of work, some tremendous work with the Boys and Girls Clubs down in Florida. Gary, if you had gone to sleep somehow around 2018, 2019, and you see that this bull market that you went to sleep in, all of a sudden you wake up in 2020, you've got 11 million people unemployed, 22 million had lost their jobs, 11 million have gotten their jobs back, 11 million still unemployed. You see stats like up to half of the restaurants in New York City could go bankrupt. Up to half of the storefronts in San Francisco have closed. You would think that the market would be in the doldrums right now. But if you were told the market is an all-time high, I don't think you would believe that. The market, though, is at an all-time high. You're an expert in the markets. You're an expert in the Fed. First question, why is the market right now at an all-time high?
Okay, and it's a little bit, I don't know if this is above, but you have a central bank here that has printed $7.5 trillion. And it's just a number trillion, but it is just gargantuan. In Europe, they have printed $7.5 trillion. There's $15 trillion being flushed into the system, into the leveraged Wall Street, which just gets a kick out of it. At the same time, they have screwed savers with 0% interest rate. So they tell Aunt Mary and Uncle Bob that's trying to make a little bit of money off of their savings, go screw. And then they would tell Wall Street, we're going to take care of you. Believe it or not, Jay Powell, the central bank, is buying the bonds of Apple. Like Apple needs help with their bond buying. So what all that does is it just creates a lot of greed, a lot of leverage. And you know how Wall Street is, they will buy anything that's on the move, and it tends to feed on itself. My worry at the end of the road, it's not going to be good news, but I think we're in a sweet spot right now. I think we're going much higher, especially this quarter. And by the way, that's in spite of who wins the election, in spite of the virus, in spite of my Giants going 0-16, in spite of anything. It's just the nature of fear and greed in the markets right now. And by the way, there is some rationality. The worst acting stocks are the cruise lines. Why? They're not in business. Airlines, hotels, casinos, energy stocks. These are the worst areas, and there's for a good reason. The best areas, and we discussed this the last time I was here, these great killer growth companies that I named for you, like Zoom, which has gone insanely to the upside since, and Tesla and things like that. These are companies that grow in their business just gargantuan type numbers. And I've always just say, if you want to own a company, what do you want to own? The one where there's a line around the block, or one where there's nobody there and just looking for some value? So I do believe there's rationality, but I also believe this is central bank. And if they weren't around, I think the Dow would probably be at 18,000 right now.
Gary, if you started investing, say, in 2010, you're a genius, because anybody in a bull market is a genius. So a lot of people have not seen like what we have seen, the 2009, the Great Recession, 2000, 2001, the internet bubble exploding, 1997, the Asian crisis, even back to 1987, when after that great bull market by Ronald Reagan, you see that incredible Black Day where Art Cashin famously says before the market opened, for those of us about to die, we salute you. And Reagan actually went to some investors and said, quit shorting the market. I will ruin your life if you don't. You don't need a great corner man until you get into trouble. It looks like now we have some perilous times ahead of us. We don't like to discuss politics, but unfortunately, politics are now part of the market. Where do you see the stimulus, and how do you plan that as far as your investing? Because I know it's hard to predict, but you have to predict it because you have nowhere else to really put your money.
Well, I tell people that we're the most news-driven environment I've ever been, times a bazillion. We have to factor in so many things that we never used to have to factor in. It used to be the Fed lower a quarter point here or there. Now we have to decide whether he's going to print $1 trillion or not. So you saw in the last 2 days, yesterday the president comes out, no more negotiations. The market takes a 500-point dump in an hour and a half. Then overnight he says, oops, I don't like the market going down. Let me lower that tone and let me have some of my minions come out and talk about doing a deal and throw a nice tweet out, and the market's up 500. So all this has to be factored in, and it's a pain in the rear end. But for me, when all is said and done, we talk market, Dow, S&P, NASDAQ. I'm more interested in the fact that I own NVIDIA right now, a chip company that's growing their business 90% this year. And companies like that will cut through any issues, any news, any problems. You show me the company that doubles their business in the next year, I'm going to show you the big winner. So that's how I play things. But leave no doubt, market right now is factoring in so much crap on a daily basis. We got the vice president thing tonight. We have 2 more debates. And then we get the election where right now Biden's winning big, and he wants to tax the crap out of people that are trying to become wealthy. And that's going to have an effect. But we got to just cross that bridge when we get there. And just, I say, I close my eyes, hold my nose, and pray every day, and that we get it right.
We're taping this up on Wednesday night, and the reason that's important is because Wednesday afternoon, the airline stocks, which you mentioned, are all up about 5% on this perceived ability for the president and the Congress to get together on about a $25 billion bailout package for the airlines. My question to you is this. I want to ask you about some hot sectors, but first let's talk about some of these lagging sectors and what you would do if you would touch them at all. When you talk about so many restaurants in the city of New York that could go bankrupt, but if they get government stimulus, could make it through. Would you touch this at all as far as investing and trying to find one of these fallen stocks that are out there, like a restaurants or the cruise line or any of these companies?
Normally I'm looking for leaders, but at this point in time, one has to recognize that if the cruise lines just get back to 50%, the stocks are going to probably double from here. So I'm watching them closely every day. I need to see that the big money is buying them before, and I'd rather pay a little bit up and know that there's some conviction behind it before jumping in and then watch them head down. With the airlines, a little number for you. Yesterday, the amount of people going through TSA was 25% of last year on the same date yesterday. So they're still on their arses, as they say. It's still bad news out there. And, I just sit back. I watch them. I know if we ever get back to the norm, they're going to be much higher. I just don't know when that's going to be. And you bring up airlines. I've been bearish on Boeing since the crashes. And I keep asking myself the question, who needs to buy jets going forward, in that there are, hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of planes being parked in the desert and in hangars right now that are not being used. And so many airlines are, shuffling off. They're saying, okay, we fly 3 times a day. They're only going to do 1 time a day. So I think Boeing's in the crosshairs too. I just careful with them right now. I think they'll have their day in the sun. It's just not here yet.
Gary, when there's so much uncertainty going on right now, you got a presidential election coming up that adds uncertainty to it. You got a stimulus package between, you think? But you got a stimulus package that between 2 groups of kids, the Republicans and Democrats, that who knows what might happen. But what are you actually buying right now? What sectors are you buying? What specific companies? Where would you advise people put money right now in this market?
Well, I can tell you, I think the NASDAQ's about to make another run. And I think you probably get another move in Amazon's. I mentioned NVIDIA. I think less of a run, but I think it'll start on the move as Apple. My only big worry with like Apple, Google, and Facebook is the maniacs in Washington are taking out their machete and trying to cut them off at the knees now, saying they're bad players. But I just think technology is going to win the day. I think at home, Peloton, I've been told to short that stock since 30, and it keeps going higher. I think these companies are here to stay, and I think they're category killers. Netflix looks like it's going to make another run here. Also, Roku just signed a big deal. That's on the move. That's the space I'm in. And every one of these companies have one thing in common. Their sales growth is phenomenal. And as I said, you want to follow the money, as you say, follow the companies that are doubling and tripling and quadrupling the business. By the way, just so you know, Zoom, 2 quarters ago did 188 million in sales. Last quarter, they did 320, and the quarter they're in 600 million. Wow. So you can see and that's why the stocks made such a move. And if you can figure out whether these things are here to stay, then there's probably a lot more to go. I remember I've studied Cisco. I don't remember when it came out, but I've studied it. And when Cisco first came out, and by the way, it's probably up 50,000 fold by now. The same thing was going on. They started with certain numbers and just numbers went up exponentially because they were the routers, they were the networking, and they just blossomed and bloomed into, everybody. The same with, Windows and Microsoft. If you find these things that are just a necessity to your life and everybody else's life, not just yours, it has to be everybody else's, that is the place to be. And that's what I look for daily. Just if I see a plus 80 in that sales and earnings, I'm good to go as long as the stock's being treated well in the market. And there's a whole host of them right now.
Gary, you're a Giants fan, a Knicks fan, and a Mets fan. Are you mad at yourself?
Depression sets in on a daily basis.
I feel your pain, my brother. I like my Cowboys, my Rangers. I don't know what happened.
And let me just say, like your Cowboys should have won a couple of Super Bowls in the last 10 years with the talent they had. You just had whoever was running the show. And by the way, he now runs the offense for the Giants. So I think there's like a listen, you know sports. It's the most depressing thing on earth. And it's also the most fun on earth. When my Giants beat New England twice, I hold that in my mind these days as I watch them score nothing on a weekly basis. Wow.
Well, then let's get to